Yes, and you're waking up with Damo here on 4WK. It is 12 minutes to 8. And in our local history segment with Harold Peacock from History Out There, he's going to talk about the incredible life of Reverend Dr. Zillman. But it does have a Toowoomba twist. Good morning, Harold.
Yes, good morning, Danny. Yeah, the Reverend Zillman, it was over a century ago, but gee, it's an incredible story.
Yeah, now, I love these. So let's get into it. This wonderful story about Dr. Zillman.
Yeah, the Reverend Zillman was one of the most amazing Queenslanders to have ever lived. Now, his full name was the Reverend Dr. John Herman Leopold Zillman. He was born in Caboolture, north of Brisbane, in 1841 to Polish and German parents. He was married 5 times. His first 3 wives all died in rapid succession within a 5-year period. He became a powerful speaker and he studied religion and sampled many religious denominations. He was raised by the Moravians, trained as a Wesleyan, spent time with the Lutherans and Episcopalians, went over to the Church of England, then the Congregationalists, after time back to the Church of England, then he preached for the Unitarians. Now, Reverend Zillman ministered in Queensland, New South Wales, Victoria, England, North America. In Queensland, he preached in Maryborough and Ipswich. In Brisbane, the suburb of Zillmere is actually named after him. In Forbes, in New South Wales, he baptised the posthumous child of the bushranger Ben Hall. In Victoria, he preached in Melbourne and Hamilton in the Western District. It was at Hamilton that he got into a public spat with the first Bishop of Ballarat, who effectively banned him from preaching in Victoria ever again. In America, he preached in churches and prisons where he witnessed the first ever execution in an electric chair. A degree of Doctor of Philosophy was conferred on him by a university in Chicago. He helped run a campaign opposing Theodore Roosevelt for the US presidency. He was even asked to stand for the United States Senate, but he turned that down. Back here in Queensland, he was approached a number of times to enter Queensland Parliament. He knocked those offers back too. He was a close friend of Prime Minister Billy Hughes. This minister knew everyone. Reverend Zillman was associated with religious work his entire life, except for 1 year in 1888, when he was editor of the old Darling Downs Gazette right here in Toowoomba.
Wow.
Now, that's the paper that eventually merged with the Toowoomba Chronicle. One of the very first editorials published upon his appointment was allegedly a piece from the Coomera Express in New South Wales. That's where he just come from. It expressed the hope and expectation that the Reverend would make his mark as a legislator, a national reformer, and even as a statesman. So he was talking himself up right from day one in Toowoomba. A Brisbane newspaper reported that under Reverend Zillman, the Gazette actually underwent a pretty good change. It said that before the pastor took charge, it had fallen into a very low ebb. In fact, it wasn't even worth the paper it was printed on. But since the Reverend's arrival, the Toowoomba paper became one of the most readable papers in the colony. But he also made enemies, such as William Henry Groome. Now, Groome was Toowoomba's first mayor. He was Speaker of the Queensland Legislative Assembly and later was the first and only transported convict to serve in an Australian federal parliament. And like I told you a couple of weeks ago, Damo, Groome's son would later officially open Radio 4WK.
Exactly.
But in this case, Groome Sr., he seemed to attack Reverend Zillman and his paper at every opportunity. It was as if Groome thought that the Darling Downs Gazette only existed for the sole purpose of allegedly slandering him. But then again, it may have been pretty good reason. You see, Reverend Zillman, in a public address early in his Toowoomba's tenure, did say that he had no respect for Speaker Groome nor for those who elected him. So there was definitely some dislike there and some mutual dislike. Now, look, the Reverend travelled the globe. He wrote books, was courted by politicians, witnessed executions, antagonised church leaders, baptised bushrangers' offspring, and edited newspapers. He even accompanied his second son and his bride on their honeymoon. So look, Reverend Zillman was 77 years old when he died in Sydney in 1919, and today he's buried in an unmarked grave. Now, his stay in Toowoomba was just for 1 year, but gee, he left an impression, and he must surely be one of the most remarkable Queenslanders to have ever lived. And I think he really should have a headstone down in Sydney, don't you think?
I think so too. Yes, to mark what a historic, career and life that he had. All of the way to America and everywhere else as well, and also, of course, his incredible work with the Darling Downs Gazette for that 1 year.
That's right, and he took on the biggest name Toowoomba had, William Groom. In fact, the biggest name Queensland had at the time, William Groom. That's not to be underestimated, but I reckon Mr. Groom had the better of him.
Well, yes, possibly. So he only lasted a year in that job.
Yeah, that's right. He was like, he saw through his probation the first 4 months. They gave him, actually made the position full-time and gave him a profit share because he was growing circulation really well. But I think at the end of the day, he just made too many enemies in Toowoomba and just had to leave. But the paper actually went from strength to strength for a number of years after that.
Wow. Tell you what, certainly setting the benchmark he was. Mate, a fantastic story. And, of course, we can jump onto your website, historyouthere.com, and read about that story and also many others as well. And, of course, you even put some fantastic pictures with it too, don't you?
Yeah, look, you'll see photos of Reverend Zillman, Mr. Groom, all the characters that I've mentioned here. You'll see photos of them, exactly what they look like at the time that they were in Toowoomba on historyouthere.com.
Wow. And I'll tell you what, lots of people have been giving us feedback how they're looking forward to each and every week of hearing these fantastic local history stories. They're lapping it up like there's no tomorrow, let me tell you.
That's fantastic, and I love researching it. And if anyone has any leads for stories they'd like me to research, just get onto you, Damo, and I'll look into it.
Exactly, and of course, what we like to do is to also give a benchmark that we'd like the stories to have sort of like a citywide or a region-wide sort of connotation. We don't do the family histories, do we?
No, that's right. We want to get out to Gundawindi and Warwick and all those kind of places, but understand the people that generate this history. Because, look, by understanding our history, we can absolutely plan a path forward.
Exactly. So jump on to historyouthere.com, and if you've got any interesting history stories that you'd like Harold to look into, then all you have to do is just email me at 4wkstudio@gmail.com, and we'll follow it up. But, mate, great to talk to you again, and thank you so much for joining us on the program again this week.
Looking forward to next time.
There we go. Historyouthere.com is where you can go and read that story and also check out the pictures. We've got one on our Facebook page as well today. So have a little look at that, and you'll be able to delve into some of the local history.